Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Russia once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. So as I've told you in previous reviews, I've been very impressed with the standard of Russian craft beer over the last few years. I've managed to try some really nice stuff. The standard has been great, and it's really nice at the moment to see that more and more Russian breweries are starting to get their beers out of Russia and export them over the European continent. So I hope that continues going forward. But like I say, we've reviewed a good number of Russian breweries here on the channel, but we've got another brewery that I've never tried anything from today. So I'm looking forward to this one. This brewery carries a very good reputation, and this particular beer seems to be very highly regarded as well. So hopefully this is another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review we are going to head to Voronezh, which is in the southwestern part of Russia, quite close to the Ukrainian border in fact, so not as southwest as you can go, down to the Caucasus and things like that. But for this review, we are going to have a look at my first beer from Brewlok Brewery. So this particular beer is called Dostoyevsky, like the author. It comes in at 12.9% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Baltic Porter. So yeah, as far as I can gather, they release this beer quite often actually. They've got quite a few different batches of this one. So this batch is number 6, and I bought this beer at Beer Dome in the Netherlands. So yeah, they've always got a good selection of Russian craft beers, and they always seem to have new breweries popping in there as well. So if you're interested in buying some Russian stuff, then I would recommend you check that out. They've got very good distribution across the European continent, of course, and they've always got beers from random countries in the Beer Dome website as well. So I do recommend that you check this one out. But yeah, this is the Dostoyevsky batch number 6, 12.9% ABV Imperial Baltic Porter from Brewlok Brewery in Voronezh in southwestern Russia. So looking forward to this. Let's get cracking with the review and see how we go. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done, or I will do, I should say, from Brewlok Brewery. This is the very first time I'm trying one of the beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Russian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, especially if you're watching from Russia and you can give me some recommendations. But as always, please do get in touch. It's always great to hear from you, and your support is massively appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brewlok Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. And I do apologise in advance for any bad Russian pronunciations in this, but I'll do my best. So, Brewlok Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Voronezh in southwestern Russia, very close to the Ukrainian border. But the brewery was founded back in 2015 by two friends. This is Maxim Bushin and Stanislav Belov. So there are apparently two other co-owners in the brewery, but those two that I just mentioned, Stanislav and Maxim, they are the ones who are active in the day-to-day operations of the brewery. But Stanislav comes from a background in sales and marketing, and he takes care of this side of the brewery. He's involved more in the business side of things. But Maxim is the chief brewer and technologist, and he has a dedicated brewing education, and he studied science before this as well. But he's previously interned with both Velka Morava and 1 Ton breweries in Russia, as well as a couple of breweries in Germany, before he came along and started up Brewlok with his friend. But the first beer that these guys produced was a Pilsner, and they continued to release a good number of recipes after that. They are actually a very prolific brewery when you look into what they've done, but they've continued to develop new recipes over the last few years. The brew kit that they have comes from Mini Brewing Systems in the Czech Republic, MBS as they're known for short, but they say that they can produce around 20 tons of beer per month. And I've noticed that this is quite a common thing when you read into Russian breweries. They always talk about how many tons of beer they produce rather than what volume, and I'm not sure exactly why that is, but as far as I can figure, 20 tons per month is somewhere in the region of 20,000 litres. So that means that these guys are producing somewhere in the region of 240, maybe 250,000 litres of beer per year, which is a good volume for a little craft brewery, in fact. But these days they've got a tap room on site, and as of September 2021 they've produced around 260 different kinds of beer. So when you consider that these guys have been around for about 6 years, that is roughly a beer every 2-3 weeks, something like that. So that is pretty damn impressive, actually. But yeah, the quality of their stuff seems to be, they seem to be a well-regarded brewery, so it's definitely cool to be able to introduce these guys to you here on the channel. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Brewlok Brewery for the moment. It's actually a little bit difficult to find the information on the Russian breweries, because quite often what you have to do is find out the names of the owners of the brewery. Then you can use that, and you transcribe those into Cyrillic. You search the brewery name with the Cyrillic names of the owners. Then you can start to find like newspaper articles, blog articles and stuff like this, and that's how you find it. And you just have to rely on Google Translate. The Russian language, of course, I think, vocabulary wise it's not as complex as some people kind of think, but the grammar, of course, is a little bit crazy, actually. Russian grammar is notoriously difficult. I did a basic Russian course at university, so I can read the Cyrillic, but yeah, I need to, the grammar was the thing that kind of put me off Russian a little bit, but I'd love to go back to it at some point. It is an interesting language, and of course Russia is a fascinating country. Lots of crazy stuff happens there, but yeah, it's always cool to research and find out a little bit more about these Russian breweries and stuff like that. So yeah, that's, as I say, all I can tell you about these guys. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. They do have a VK page as well, which is the most common social media in Russia, actually. And as always, you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, as I said to you earlier, this one is a 12.9% Imperial Baltic Porter, or Imperial Porter, whatever you want to say. But I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this before we open it up. So as you can see, there is the Dostoyevsky in the Cyrillic there. Let me just change the setting of the light so that it is a little bit warmer. There you can see it. So yeah, Dostoyevsky. I think that's been picked up quite nicely by the camera now. You can see on the side here, 12.9% ABV, and it also has the Brewlok symbol under the wax thing as well. I've sliced the wax tip so that we can actually get into this thing. Let's check that the camera can focus on that. But yeah, I sliced the wax tip so that we could open it up quite easily. And there on the side you can see the Brewlok symbol as well. I still love the camera. Pardon me on this phone, it's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one. Let me just switch the light back so that it's better for the rest of the video, and there we go. So yeah, it says serve between 10 and 12 degrees. So I think we've had this one sitting out for a fair little bit. So I think we should be in good shape to try this one then. So yeah, batch number 6, and I think it's saying here on the bottom that it might have been February, yeah, 2020. So I think this one has been bottled in February of 2020. So it should be at a nice age, actually. But 12.9% Imperial Baltic Porter, Dostoyevsky, number 6. And of course, it's named, these beers are named after the Russian author, is it Fyodor or Fyodor Dostoyevsky, who is quite well regarded. But let me just see if I can get this open. Aha, there we go, got it. These wax top ones are always a little bit annoying, actually, but this one has opened fairly easily. So let's get this guy out and into the glass and see how we go. It does tell you a little bit about the brewery and stuff on the side here, but of course it's all in Russian, and my Russian isn't that good. I know how to ask a few questions and how to answer a few questions and some vocabulary, but otherwise my Russian isn't that great at all. But like I say, Russia's a fascinating country, you know, crazy amounts of history and stuff there. So I would very much like to go back to my Russian at some point once I'm finished with Japanese. But yeah, let's just line that up again so that it looks nice and pretty for the video, and so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, we've got this guy out now. So As you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Porter, this guy's poured a lovely, very dark ebony rosewood colour. You can see that the head on this beer was about 1/3 finger, and I would describe this as being a kind of medium to dark tan colour, so it looks very, very nice. That's fading away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer, but you've got a nice thick ring just around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I think overall it does look very, very nice. You can see that the head is really fading away to just be a very thin foamy kind of wispy layer, but you've got that nice ring just kind of lingering there. But yeah, as you would expect, lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any adjuncts and barrel aging that you do will also affect this as well. But as far as I could figure, this one wasn't barrel aged actually. It didn't say anything about barrel aging. But yeah, there was nothing about that when I had a little look at it on Untappd. But I dare say if there is barrel aging, we'll be able to detect that in the flavour. But yeah, lovely looking beer, this one. Nothing really to say about that. I'm not sure whether this one will be a bit of a longer boil, but again, we can sometimes tell this from the flavour, of course. But yeah, let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Nothing untoward really about the appearance of this beer when you consider what style it is. So let's look at it and see how we go. Very curious about this. That does smell really nice. That's ridiculous. So straight away with this beer, you just get all the goodness out of it. It's pretty much exactly what you would expect of a Baltic porter, and it's it's Imperial, so it's big and it's in your face. So yeah, it is pretty damn good actually. So where do we start with this then? The backbone of this beer, absolutely, is, I would say, kind of nice toasty well-fired bread crust. There's a lot of that coming out of this one, so nice big kind of toasty well-fired bread crust in there, absolutely. Yeah, nice big toasty well-fired bread crust. On top of that, you get a lovely kind of thick, quite dense brown bready note out of it. A sort of German kind of rye bread sort of thing. There's quite a bit of that coming out of this beer, and like we say, it is pretty dense actually. So in that regard, it's very, very nice. But yeah, there's 1 or 2 little nutty and woody undertones to it, which I think are great. Yeah, lovely big kind of woody and nutty undertones to it, but they come out a little bit more the further you go into the aroma. I think when your nose adjusts to it, you're going to get a wee bit more of that. But I don't think this beer, just going from the aroma, I don't think it's barrel aged. I think this is just a kind of straight up big Imperial Porter, this one. So yeah, it's as we say, yeah, toasty well-fired bread crust backbone, bit of a kind of regular bread crust sitting on top of that, thick brown German rye bread type notes sitting on top of it, 1 or 2 nutty and woody notes coming out of it, but there's certainly a bit of chocolate to this beer. There's like there is a good bit of a kind of chocolatey character coming out of this one. So a high percentage cocoa for me, a sort of 70-80% cocoa chocolate coming out of this one, which I can really appreciate. So nice high cocoa chocolate coming out of this. It's got a little bit of dryness to it on that chocolate side of things as well, but there's a lovely big bit of brown sugar in there too, which I can appreciate. So for me, you do get a bit of that kind of sweeter caramelly note in there, and you can smell the brown sugars are a little bit leathery, so that does make me wonder if this beer has a slightly longer boil. An Imperial Porter, most beers tend to have like a 90-minute boil. Usually it's 90 minutes or so that you would boil these things for, but you can smell that the brown sugars have that little bit of leathery character. They've caramelized quite a lot, so that does make me wonder if this has had a slightly longer wort boil than 90 minutes. It's not too pronounced, I would say, but yeah, like we say, big sweet brown sugars in there, a bit of a leathery, highly caramelised brown sugar, some sweet McVitie's digestive biscuity notes to it as well for sure. But yeah, everything you would expect of a Baltic porter, absolutely, but it's just really nicely done. I think this is, we've tried quite a few Baltic porters over the years. I think this is going to be one of these ones where it's just really well done. And to be honest, I think with the number of beers that we've tried on the channel now, this is all you can ask for. You can't, it's always interesting to find something new, but the most you can really ask for is that these beers are crafted nicely. And with the Russian breweries, you do tend to get very nicely done beers, particularly on the dark side of things. But that's not to take away from how good the Russians seem to be at the IPAs and stuff like that these days. But the dark beers are always pretty damn good in my experience. But yeah, the malty side of things, it is very nice. Hoppy wise, there's not too much to report with this. You get a little bit of earthiness in there. There is a wee touch of herbal quality. You can smell the remnants of some floral note in there. There is a wee bit of a grassy character to it, a little tiny touch zesty. But yeah, the green component, of course, in this one isn't too prominent. That's kind of what you expect. A porter is a malt forward beer. On the fruity side of things though, again, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a wee bit of a sharp raisin to it, maybe a little hint of a juicy plum, but I actually get quite a lot of black currant out of this, a sort of soft black currant and maybe just a little bit more pungent, sharper blackberry in there. These are all things that you expect of, and you do get a little bit of cakiness out of this beer the more that you smell of it too. But yeah, a little bit of sharper raisin, juicy plum, softer black currant, and maybe just a wee hint of blackberries. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business at the moment. So yeah, I like how this one comes across. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the aroma and have a taste of this beer then. So yeah, this one is the Dostoyevsky, batch number 6, 12.9% ABV from Brewlok Brewery in Voronezh in the southwest of Russia. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers, and nastrovia. There we go. That's pretty damn solid, I have to say. That's another good Russian beer. Not surprised. Really not surprised at this point. And if Beer Dome are importing this, it's going to be a good beer. So I'm going to say, if we talk about where in the Baltic Porter scale this one lies, it really is a little bit more of a kind of robust porter. This is actually quite a big bitter beast. But remember, the main difference between a porter and a stout is, of course, the job that the yeast does. A porter is a lighter, more kind of drinkable beer, if you like, than the stouts are. The stouts are obviously thicker and creamier, but I think, to be honest, when you get to the Imperial porters, there's not all that much of a difference other than a slightly lighter and sometimes slicker mouthfeel. But yeah, this one is really quite nice. I think I would struggle with this one, at least. If I was tasting this blind without knowing what it was, I would struggle to tell you that this was an Imperial porter rather than an Imperial stout, to be honest. But the other thing that's getting me about this is that this one has a really nice transition. When you take it in, it really is quite sweet, but then it dries out quite a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. But I like how this goes together, so it gets a thumbs up from me, absolutely. Yeah, where do we start with this then? Where do we start? So on the malty side of things, then we'll just go through this beer as we always do with them. So backbone of this beer, absolutely roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty notes. That goes right across the middle of your palate. Absolutely, no doubt in my mind about that. So yeah, big roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. That is the backbone of this beer. On top of that, you've got a little bit more of a kind of thicker brown bready character. These were all things that we picked up, and these two layers are across the middle and the back third of your palate. Absolutely, you really can get these. yeah, those are the backbones of the beer. But let's focus on that middle third of your palate for the moment. So at either end of that middle third of your palate, you get a slightly more heavy, bigger bread crusty note out of the beer. So quite a bit of that going on here. So yeah, in the front, underneath the front half of that middle third of your palate, there are a few kind of woody notes in there. It's almost got a little bit of a smooth, vanilla-y, woody, oaky character to it. But then on top of that, you get a wee bit of nuttiness coming out of the beer. Yeah, so a nice little bit of woodiness, vanilla notes, nuttiness in there. Yeah, nice kind of, as I say, toast. It really, that kind of just balances the beer out. This one actually does have quite a bit of sweetness in the beginning, but it becomes more and more bitter the further you go into the aftertaste. So again, those notes that I've just pointed out are underneath the front half of that front third of your palate. Then further back, yeah, toasty, bready notes in there, and I think it works really well from that side of things. But yeah, on top of that, as we say, nice kind of brown bready layer. And there is a bit of chocolate to this too, and I think the chocolate is kind of sitting within the brown bready side of the beer. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got quite a pungent, dark, toasty chocolate note coming out of this beer. So that's yeah, you get that sort of 80-90% cocoa sort of thing, really quite bitter chocolate. But as you move further forward, it really mellows out a little bit, and it's almost at the front tip of the palate. You're almost talking, sorry, not at the front tip of the palate, at the front part of that middle third of your palate, you've almost got more of a kind of 40% cocoa chocolate, which is kind of interesting. So the contrast between this is pretty cool, I have to say. So I like that about this beer. But you know, the chocolate kind of sits around the edge of this circle right in the middle of your palate, and this is the brown sugar. So for me, you've got this more oily, brown sugary, caramelly note sitting in the very dead centre of that middle third of your palate. And again, I really like how this goes together. So yeah, nice kind of oily, brown sugary element to it, which is great. So yeah, a good oily kind of brown sugary element in there, sort of sweet, caramelly, as we say. It does have a wee bit of a toasty brown sugary note to it. Like in the very dead centre of your palate, it's quite oily and sweet. You can get a little touch of leatheriness off this. So I think this beer maybe has had a slightly longer boil than simply 90 minutes. I think there is a wee bit of that leathery character to the brown sugars there. But yeah, quite concentrated and caramelised in the middle third of your palate. That's to cover up the booze. When this is 12.9%, you know, you expect this, to be honest. But as you move further out, it gets a little bit more roasty and toasty, and it also gets a little bit sweeter as well. But towards the edges of that circle, you start to get the more McVitie's digestive biscuity notes, and then beyond that, you can feel the sort of bitter chocolatey kind of elements in there as well. And that, of course, is sitting on top of all that bready character we talked about earlier. But that is where all the complexity in this beer is. It sits in that middle third of your palate. But this is damn solid, actually. So thumbs up to Brewlok for this. It's another very, very good beer. So I'm impressed with this one. But I think that's everything we really need to say about that middle third of your palate. I think we've covered that quite in depth. So let's focus on the back third of your palate. So border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there again, and a bread crusty quality. But into that back third of your palate, you can feel toasty bread crust underneath, kind of the thick, dense, brown bready character on top of that. Then on top of all of that, you can feel the more airy, lighter, and slightly sweeter bready character from the yeast. So you really get that. Again, back at the back of your palate, the flavour sits about this high. Then as you come forward, it just condenses down. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it squashes a wee bit more together, and you get all of that in there. So yeah, this is quite an interesting beer from that perspective. But yeah, malty, yeasty side of things in this one is pretty good, but I don't think this is barrel aged. I don't get the impression that this one is barrel aged. It could have oak chips or something put into it, but definitely not barrel aged. It's not you don't get these infused flavours enough out of it for it to be barrel aged. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you do get quite a pungent earthiness out of this. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and as we push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. Round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit more lighter and grassy, a little bit kind of zesty or whatever. So yeah, it has got a wee touch of that grassy zestiness in there. But if this has been bottled in 2020, a lot of the green component from the hops will have dropped out of this one. But I think you still get a wee bit of aromaticity and a wee bit of grassiness out of this. I would definitely say that about it for sure. So yeah, I like how this beer goes about its business in that particular regard. But let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity part of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third, again you get a bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit more of a kind of cakey thing, and then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of smooth and bready actually. So yeah, we can definitely say that about this beer for sure. But yeah, on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And I think that works quite nicely. It's actually got quite a nice fruity character to it. So yeah, as I say, you get a bit of a cakey character at the back of that front third of your palate. On top of that, there's a wee bit of a sharp raisin, a juicier plum underneath. Then as you move further forward into the in this one, you start to get a soft kind of figgy quality out of it, then a little bit of a more oily blackberry sort of thing going towards the tip of the tongue. So yeah, these are all things that you would expect of a Baltic porter. You would expect these kind of sharper but juicy and oily red fruity characters out of the beer, but it certainly works very well, this one. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that sense. And I think the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, it's more of the roasty toasty bread crust that lingers there. Some of the woodiness is there, a bit of the sweetness is there, and also just a little bit of that kind of fruity sweetness as well. But yeah, I think this beer goes together really nicely, and in terms of a Baltic porter, it's really damn solid. So big thumbs up to Brewlok for this. They've done a lovely beer here. But let's round off this review then with the mouthfeel. Mouthfeel wise, this beer, I would say it's pretty it's bottom end of full bodied for me. Carbonation is very smooth. It is a really smooth beer, this one, and that's kind of what you expect of a porter, to be honest with you. You don't expect it to be, kind of light and slick or whatever. You do expect these beers to be quite smooth in a sense. But yeah, one of the kind of it is more like a robust porter, this stylistically. It has quite a lot of bitterness to it. So I think this beer, you're talking 80, 90 IBUs for this one, possibly the full 100. This is a high bitterness beer, both from the malty side of things, and I think the hops also linger there and have quite a high bitterness, so not surprised about that. But the malty side of things, bitter underneath, smooth in the middle, and a bit of sweetness on top. And on top of that, you get some really nice as we say, you get a little bit of dryness further into the aftertaste too, but then you've also got some nice oily fruity characters out of this one. So yeah, I do like how this beer goes about its business from that perspective. So it's a thumbs up from me. The fruity side of it complements everything. It's got a good balance between sweetness and bitterness, and I think it's just really solidly done. So yeah, an awesome beer from Brewlok. I'll need to see what other styles we can get from these guys and maybe order something from them at some point in the future. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one just now. This one was the Dostoyevsky Tom 6, batch number 6, I think that would be, pardon me, from Brewlok Brewery in Voronezh in southwestern Russia. A 12.9% Imperial Porter, and I can safely say it's a bit of a monster. I can feel it going to the head just now. But yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brewlok, and we will return to these guys at some point soon. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.